Art Junkies presents Weld Wednesday with AWS. Brought to you by the American Welding Society. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, so what you been up to since World Skills, man?
Just working away.
I mean, you didn't get enough work leading up to the event?
Well, it turns out you don't get paid to do World Skills, so
Yeah, that's true.
you got to make some money somehow, right?
Yeah. So what are you doing? What are you doing now?
So I started a business right after World Skills, so I've been working on that, and then I'm also working for a guy. I'm doing a Kennecott shutdown right now. I was in North Carolina for a couple weeks, welding on some water line, so just traveling around chasing the money.
Traveling around welding?
Yep.
Having a lot of fun doing that?
Oh yeah, dude, it's a blast.
So are you working for yourself doing this the type of work that you're doing now? Or are you working for a company?
So most of the bigger jobs, I'm working for a company. We're trying to get the business off the ground. It's just taking a little bit more overhead.
Okay.
A little more capital, get that up and going.
Yeah,
So,
that's the problem, man. Is it's rough getting into business. It's expensive too.
yeah, really expensive, especially right now.
Oh yeah, now's the worst time, dude. I'm setting up a school down here in Orlando, Florida, and my business partner and I keep going back and forth about, dude, like I can't believe the materials are going to be this much or labor is going to be this much. And yeah, I should have built a school back in like 2019 before COVID came to town because it's ridiculous right now.
What is it now, like $1 a pound for steel? And
I'm not even sure. I haven't
welding
checked on
machine.
steel prices. I mean, like we bought 2x4s. They were like damn near $3 a piece. I remember, like prior to COVID, they were like 98 cents.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's gotten bad.
It's just money, right?
Yeah, it's just money. I'll make money. That's what I keep telling my buddy. I was like, dude, we're going to make money on this, all right? The money's going to come back. We got to spend money to make money.
Yep.
But yeah, it's definitely expensive. So what's your new business going to entail? What type of work are you going to be doing? And obviously welding, but are you going to specialize in one area or the other, or fabrication, custom work?
Right now, I think I'm going to focus on water lines and doing welding up those water lines. Maybe try to get into dam shutdowns or refinery shutdowns. Right now, it's just whatever I can get my hands on. But in the future, water lines and dams is kind of what I'm shooting for.
Is there a pretty big market for that in your area?
Yeah, I mean, all of our water from Utah gets piped over to California, so there's always going to be like. My decision in that was the oil field kind of is pretty political when it comes and it goes, but the water industry's not really going to go anywhere.
Yeah, that's going to be stable.
So,
Everybody's going to need water.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, there's
It's
not a
just gonna
great
get
alternative to
more
water.
demand.
Yeah. And so I wonder if I was thinking about that because I think California's kind of big on the the desalinification systems, where they like pump in salt water and then they extract the salt from it and then purify the water and everything.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking into doing different methods of that stuff.
I haven't looked into it that far.
Look into that stuff, man. That might be a big deal. You probably go in there and do new installs and repairs and stuff on that.
I'm game. It sounds like some good money.
Sounds like more work. So now I want to go back and kind of talk about, obviously, your experience with the whole World Skills. You placed third, what was it, last year, or 2022?
Yep.
Which, I mean, everybody there, top tier competitors from all over the world. Amazing, amazing welds. Like, I mean, you guys are doing stuff that's not even, it's not even held to code because the code allows you to have discontinuities. Y'all were welding to zero discontinuities, zero, imperfections in the weld whatsoever. Zero, like what I think I was talking to Chandler. He said you're allowed, or not even allowed, 1 millimeter of variance, throughout the length of your weld.
Yep. 1 millimeter sums it up.
That's insane, man. How do you hold your tolerances? Because I tell everybody when I weld, or when I teach welding, like always be comfortable, kind of like do like a dry run. How do you stay that still, or like how do you brace yourself, or I mean, like do you scribe lines on the material so you can actually see exactly how big that fillet weld needs to be and just maintain that consistency and width the entire time?
Everything so like my fillet welds, we'd scribe out my fillet welds, and then like I would have calipers in my booth, and I would check every single joint and make sure it's within a certain tolerance of what I knew I could make, or I knew that I could weld to. So mine was like 1,000th. It had to be within 1,000th of variance within the joint.
Jeez.
So, and then just an insane amount of arc hours.
Yeah, like tell me. So, how did you prepare for this? Well, actually, let's start way back. So, I'm assuming you competed at a regional level initially before you went to state. Yep. So, what did your regional competition consist of?
So, I guess regionals, not necessarily. It was within our school, and then Utah's small enough that we can just go straight to state.
Okay.
And so I competed within the school, went straight to state, won state, and then went to nationals.
What did your state consist of?
Like project wise, or
yeah, like as far as like what was the what processes did you have to do? What weldments were there?
So the four main processes: make, stick, TIG, and flux core. And then the year that I competed was the first time they did virtual, and so it was a little bit weird. We had separate projects for each process, and then we had to film ourselves competing. So it was actually a big Zoom meeting. So everybody was on a Zoom meeting welding, and then you had somebody running a camera, and you had somebody come and inspect your projects after. So whole different ball game, but it was good. It went good.
So now after you won state, then you went to nationals from there?
Yep, straight to nationals about 2 months after.
Okay, and that's usually takes place in what? Atlanta, Georgia, right?
Yeah, usually.
Yeah, I think that's coming up next month, I want to say, somewhere around the 5th and 6th or something like that.
It's June 17th.
Okay, yeah, I was way
coming right up on it.
Yeah, it's coming quick.
Yep.
I wanted to go to that this year, but like now that I'm in the process of trying to open up my own school, like I just don't have the timeline to do it.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time to open a school, huh?
It does, man. But, it also takes a lot of time to put on a competition that size.
Yeah.
I wanted to go up there and just kind of like see logistically how this stuff lays out, what the projects are working on, the different processes they're running, what's everybody's, strategy going in. Because I got to witness World Skills only because it was held up there in Cleveland. Had it been held in China, like I wouldn't have got to go to that. But because it was in Cleveland, It was kind of cool. I get to fly up, check everything out. And I mean, that in itself was a logistical nightmare it looked like it was pretty smooth. Do you think for the most part, it was a pretty smooth run competition up there?
Oh, yeah. I think that it couldn't have gone smoother. Lincoln Electric did a top-notch job of making sure that everything went perfect and according to plan.
Yeah, and I think they only had like a month or 6 weeks or whatever to get everything set up. By the time they raised their hand, they're like, yeah, we'll go ahead and take care of it. 6 weeks later, the entire welding school's gutted and new machines are brought in and everything's, kind of set up specifically for that competition.
Yep. It's pretty insane. They actually, I don't know if you knew this, but they shut down one of their manufacturing lines. Actually, 3 of their manufacturing lines to make sure that we had rod for that competition.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So they went all out in making sure that we had what we needed.
So you guys had like brand new, fresh 7018s, like.
Yeah, and we have to do international standard stuff. So 7016s have to come out, and then their flux core wires a little bit different. Their sizes are all metric. So.
Oh wow! So now, did you practice on standard sizes, or did you practice on metric sizes going into the competition? Because it's a slight variance, but that's enough to kind of throw you off your game if you're practicing 035, 045, and then you switch over to a metric conversion. You're running like 0.9 millimeter. Or like, what is it, 1.3, 1.4, something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah,
something weird.
Yeah, it's going to throw you off enough.
Yeah, we practiced everything metric. Once you hit trials, your wire has to be perfect. Your shielding gas has to be what you're going to be using during competition. Your time, your plate. The heat number of the plate mattered when we were welding on this stuff.
Dang. And I would imagine everybody's got the same heat and lot number as far as the material is concerned, right?
Yep. A competition they did, yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be fair across the board. So does that mean you set your wire feed speed in meters per minute instead of inches per minute?
No, I did use the US standard of like inches per minute. And
Okay. Yeah, because you want to practice the same way that you're gonna, essentially test or compete.
Yep. Same machine, like everything is tracked. I've got a notebook full of notes, and down to the minute, you track your time, you track how long it's going to take to make a certain weld, how many passes you need,
Yeah. Now, how many hours did you put in practice leading up from nationals to state?
Nationals to state. I was probably 40 hours a week, not a ton. But I was working at the same time, trying to make the money so that I could go to nationals.
Mm-hmm.
I guess 40 hours a week is enough. I don't know.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. Yeah, because I remember at one point, like when you were going to World Skills, you said you were practicing like 16, 18 hours a day leading up to that one.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And then you were still working and going to school, right?
The 2 months leading to World Skills, I cut everything. And I was 18 hours a day, straight arc time, welding. For the trials process, I was in school doing work and school, still doing 70 hours a week. So
why'd you put yourself through it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wanted to be the best of the best, and I wanted to compete against the best of the best. So, like, my reason for starting it changed from my reason to keep doing it, and then my reason to do my best at World Skills changed from all those reasons. I mean, it's a 1.5 year journey just for World Skills. So, a lot of changes, a lot of time.
So what was your reason to get in the competition originally, just like entering, the one at your school? Because I've held competitions before to like, you try to get people excited about doing a competition. They're like, yeah, no, I'm good. Like, how do you motivate somebody, or what was it about the competition that kind of appealed to you that you were like, you know what, screw it. Yeah, I'll do it.
I've been competing in Skills USA since sophomore year of high school. And my first competition, I don't know, I just fell in love with it. I'm a competitive person, but just getting in that booth and everything is riding on your shoulders and your skill level, and leading up to that competition, what you do determines your success at the competition. And it's pretty even. It's kind of like going to the gym. Like, the work you get in is what you're going to get out. And so, I don't know. I just love how even it is and how competitive it is. I mean, everybody in our industry is always like, oh yeah, I'm the best of the best. Like, I'm the best welder in the world. And like, I wanted to be able to say that and like have paper, something
have
to back
paper
it up
and
with.
photos and medals and stuff to back it up.
Yeah. So that's why I got into it.
It's an interesting concept. I've had a lot of students come to that, that idea towards the end of the program. It's like, wow, you really get what you put in. Like, nothing's going to be handed to you. I mean, like everything you get in this industry, you're going to have to work for. You're going to have to put in the time and the effort, whether it's at home, you're putting in extra hours at school, or like in the garage, like just practicing, honing your craft.
Yep.
It's a lot of work. So was all the work and everything leading up to it, was it worth it?
100%. 100 million%. I will say that the rest of my life.
So what's some of the cool stuff that you've got to do just because of, or what made it worthwhile? What made it worth, those 18-hour days or, 40-hour weeks of just, straight hood time? What made it worth it all?
I would say that perfecting a skill that I love so much, like after World Skills and working in industry, I can now see where it's brought me and how far it's brought me ahead of everybody else coming into industry. So putting in 1.5 years put me years ahead. And I'm out here with these good old boys that have been doing it for 40 years, and I can keep up with them because I put in that time. And so just having that skill level and the knowledge behind it and how the weld reacts and why it reacts that certain way, and just being able to read a puddle, it's changed my entire career. I'm that much further ahead now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you put in a lot of hood time, and that's the biggest thing. Everybody's like, how do I get better at welding? Hood time. That's at the end of the day, that's all you're going to be able to. That's the only way you're going to get better.
Yep.
Now, do you have a lot of these guys that have been in industry like 30, 40 years, like you were saying, like doubt your skills, and then you kind of walk up and just drop the hood and let your hands speak for themselves?
All the time. Anytime I show up on a new job. Yep.
That's got to be fun.
Oh, it's so fun to see the reaction on their face. You walk up to them, and I mean, I don't really brag about the fact that I took bronze. I kind of keep that to myself, but you can tell when an old boy's watching you. And he's watching you, and you're like, "Yep, all right, I got to drop the hood and get to work and make sure this one's good, or else I'm never going to live it down."
Yeah.
And then when he sees it, he's like, "All right, I respect this kid."
Yeah, I wouldn't say nothing either. Because, you walk up on the job site, you're like, how long you been welding? Got about a year and a half in the game, boss. And then it just like throw down some freaking serious welds.
Yep. It's fun.
Yeah, I guess that would be a lot of fun out there, like messing around with the other guys that have been out there doing it for a while.
Yeah, they're like, well, I'll show you a few things later today, but let's see how you do now. Then they'll ask you what you're doing and how you did that.
Just tell them hood time.
Yeah, hood time. That's the answer to everything.
Yeah, I'd like to see how many hours you actually have like arc on time. That'd be kind of neat. You could probably pull it up in one of your machines. I mean, like not an overall total, but I mean, just wondering how much. Because I mean, if you think about it, like on most jobs and stuff, you're only getting maybe 70% arc time throughout an entire day.
Yeah.
I mean, that means you're good. You're doing good. Everything's already prepped, fit up, and everything. Yeah, that's 70% arc time is a good day. But I mean, leading up to the competition, you probably had more than that because a lot of your stuff was just straight welding, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I probably averaged only 80%. I had to cut my own material out, which cut it down just a little bit, but still 80% of 18 hours that's a lot of
that's quite a bit.
time.
Now, did you train at home or did you train at school or did like combination of both, or did you go to a specific facility to do it?
So for trials, I was training at Utah State University Eastern. And they had a booth set up for me that I was training at. And then once I was selected as the U.S. competitor, I went and I trained with Chandler. I actually stayed at his shop for 2 or 3 months with him and just put in as many hours as I could with him. So
now, what was that? What was that like working with a past, competitor for World Skills?
Honestly, could not do it without having that. I think there's only 16 of us that have done it since 92. And I have every single one of the numbers, and they were all calling me, making sure I had what I needed, making sure that they had their notes available to me. I mean, everybody in this competition welds different. Like I weld way different from Chandler, and Ryan Fincher that went to Russia last year, he welds way different from Chandler, and I weld way different from Ryan. And so it's basically a culmination of their experience and your personal preference on how you're welding coming together. And I could not have done it without Chandler's advice or Brandon Mulebrandt's advice. So
yeah, it's great that you've got that network to lean on and everything. Because I got to speak with all those guys up at World Skills in Cleveland, and I mean, it's a great group of people. I mean, you got like an entire committee that's got your back to kind of push you to that next level to be able to compete. Now, was there a big difference in like your style versus Chandler's? Did you adopt a lot of the way that he does things, or did you kind of just like hone your own style?
Chandler and I spent a lot of time changing some of my settings and some of my things, but also I stayed quite a bit into my own style, which Chandler was able to help me hone that style even more, even though it wasn't his style. So by the time I was starting to train with Chandler, that the time that we had to keep the changes to a minimum so that we could compete at World Skills. We had to perfect what I had, because I had a 3-month break in between being selected as a competitor and being told that there was going to be a competition. So
that's not a lot of time to prepare, especially when you think about your counterparts from other countries. You know, they what age they're starting to train at, like age 10, 11, 12.
Yep.
In some of these different countries. And that's all they're going for. They're training to compete in world skills in welding.
It's a whole different ballgame. It's a social class thing for them. Like, for example, I was talking to the Japanese competitor, and he would get his military requirements waived, and then he would get a certain amount of money if he took gold, and then he would get like, I think he got a house. That might be the Korean competitor, but like there's this whole reward, or there's like, you're going to be working in the worst, dirtiest fab shop if you don't win. That's how seriously they take it.
Well, at least they get a job either way.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that. I figured, because I was looking around for all the employers at World Skills. I was like, where's all the companies that are like, oh yeah, we need welders desperately, send us all the welders you can. You'd think there'd be a lot more employers like lined up outside the door to start passing out or just handing people jobs, saying, hey, you just took third in the world. I'd like you to come work for my company, whether it's, as a consultant or as a welder or a foreman or a supervisor or, something to that capacity. You'd think that there would be a lot more interest from companies, especially those that are saying, we can't find good help. I mean, here you are just going to compete, putting in 16 hours a day, no pay. On the flip side, you actually have to pay your own way, just for travel, for food, for lodging, all that stuff. I mean, there's like no government subsidies on our side to facilitate you getting from A to B, wherever you're going to compete.
It was, yep.
Man, yeah, we got to do better.
That's actually something that me and the AWS president are working on right now. We've actually started a GoFundMe account, and we've also started a donation page on AWS's website, because the committee's in charge of bringing a competitor to World Skills, and they have a set amount of money that they can use for that. And that money hasn't changed since 2001, or like an obscene amount of time. And they've just stretched it out. So the AWS president and I have worked on getting that set up so that we can support our competitors just as much as the other countries can, because this is representing our country. It's more than just a welding competition. It's, I got to hold the flag on the podium. So we're working on it.
It's literally the Olympics of skilled trades.
Yep.
I mean, you think about it. I mean, you got people competing from Russia, China, Brazil, England, U.S., France, Italy. I mean, all these different countries competing on the world stage. Just in many other trades, but like, let's just keep it to welding. I mean, these folks are all going to compete in welding on internationally.
Yep. The amount of money that the other countries spend on this competition is pretty.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's all bragging rights.
Yeah.
And so when you went into the competition for World Skills, what all did that consist of? I know you guys were there for 4 days?
Yep. So our competition was stretched over 4 days.
And it's like you have 20 hours to complete all 4 tasks?
Yeah. This year was 20 hours. And they split it up over the 4 days, and you have to, as long as you're completed within that 20 hours, you're good.
So can you put in like 2 10-hour days like right up front, or do you have to stagger it out like 5 hours per day? Or
no, they staggered. They did 6 hours the first day, 6 hours the second day, and then 2 4-hour days after that. So just to keep everything fair.
I got you. What's day one consist of?
Day one for me was module 1. and I started prepping my vessel. But module 1 is like the test plates, the V grooves, the fillet weld brakes, the pipe. I set aside 5 hours for myself to do that, and then the vessel, have a certain set of hours that I can do that in.
So now with the because you had to do what, 2 fillet welds, right?
2 fillet welds, 2 V grooves. So the V groove is a 3/8 plate and a 5/8 plate, and then schedule 80 4-inch pipe.
Okay,
I think that was it for the test plates.
So with the fillet welds, did each fillet weld have, because you had 2 samples, did each of them have different leg lengths, or was it like they were both the exact same, like mirrored image of each other?
10 millimeter fillet weld size.
Okay, so roughly what's that? 3/8? Yeah, 3/8.
3/8.
Pretty close to
just
it.
Over 3/8, I think. I'm so used to metric now. I don't even know.
And then you got to maintain that entire 10 millimeter leg length over, what's it, 12-inch coupon?
It's 10-inch coupon.
10-inch coupon. Okay. And then once they get done, they do what? They do like a visual, and then once the visual's done, because I thought that was kind of cool that every different country that's competing, they're the judges. So they have like what they call a specialist, or what do they call an expert? So they have an expert from each company or from each country, and they all kind of, every country gets to grade every other country's pieces.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of neat.
So
it kind of keeps everything pretty fair. You don't just have like one set of judges going through and saying, this.
Yeah, and they divide it up into teams so that you have the same set of people judging the same weld. So if we had a flux core fillet weld brake, those same 4 people would judge the flux core fillet weld brakes, and they wouldn't judge anything else.
Oh, okay.
So that it was consistent across the board on what they would call and what they wouldn't call, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense, because you got a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, let's things change. Like I've judged a lot of different welding competitions, and by the time you get to like contestant number 9, you're like, oh man, maybe I was too hard on contestant 1 because things aren't getting better, or things are getting a lot better. Maybe I wasn't hard enough on contestant 1, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, that kind of keeps it fair when you've got a group of people and all they're doing is inspecting the fillet weld.
Yeah.
So once they do the visual, do they take photos of that? Because they do a brake test right afterwards.
I don't know if they take photos. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure they X-ray it. I was so focused on the competition that I don't know if they X-rayed the fillet welds or if they just broke them.
Yeah, I think they just did the visual and then they did the break on that, because I want to say that all the stuff that they were doing the X-ray on was the pipe and the plates.
Yeah,
I believe so, because I think Frank Dragolich was the one back there running, because he runs the ATF, or he was running the ATF for Lincoln at the time.
Oh, okay. So yeah, just a break. The scoring criteria is set up so that it doesn't really matter if you have like a visual, or if you can judge the visual and then judge the break. It's pretty separate.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't necessarily need pictures of it.
Okay. So they already. I was just wondering, like, if you wanted a challenge or something like that, if they could go back and say, well, it was, it maintained the entire consistency throughout, or whatever. You could challenge a judge's decision or whatever based off of what actually happened before they broke it. Because once you break it, you really can't put it back together and be like, oh yeah, no, he was right.
And once that visual's done, it's pretty set in stone.
Okay.
On the fillet weld brakes, I think you can contest it. Like your expert can contest it, but it's that same group of people that has the power over that weld. So your contest to that weld isn't necessarily gonna happen either way, if that makes sense.
Okay. So then once the fillet weld's done, then you go into you got a 3/8 groove, and then you've got a 5/8 groove. Which processes were you running those in?
So they draw it out of a hat before competition. You have a set of 16 different welds that they could be position and process. So the ones at World Skills when I competed, I had a 1G 5/8 plate. It was a short arc root, well, a hard wire root and a flux core fill and cap. And my 3/8 plate was was solid wire all the way out. So they don't do a flux core root, but they do 70-18 roots and TIG roots. And then it changes from there based on position and process for cap.
Okay, so but everybody's doing the same process, same position, right?
Yes.
Okay, so they don't.
Yeah.
So they don't just say, "Okay, Jordan, you're going to do a 70-18 root, a flux core fill and cap in the 3G," and then like China's going to do TIG root all the way out in 1G or anything like that. So everybody's got the same process, same position for roots, fills, caps.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that makes it a lot more fair. My luck, I keep drawing 3G.
I'd take 3G all day.
Yeah.
Over 1G all day.
Really?
Yeah, that 1G 5/8 is tough.
Is it?
Like it's to get your weld to be within the World Skills criteria, it's tough because your root has to have a certain amount of reinforcement and you have to have that width. And then like a 3G, you can sit there and you can burn out slag or you can burn out trash, but that 1G, you got to make sure that it's dialed in before you even start, or else your X-ray is going to go out the window.
Yeah. Now, do they allow you to use power tools while you're doing it? Like once you put your root in, can you use a power tool and wire brush and all that stuff to clean it all out?
Yep. I could technically take out a weld completely and redo it if I needed to, but it comes down to time too. So it's balancing.
Got to make sure you got good abrasives on your side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have to grind any of your welds out and redo them?
I think on my 2G 3/8 root, I had to take out a little section that was overfill, or too convex on the backside. I'm trying to think of the right wording.
You get too much penetration. Okay.
Excessive penetration. Yeah.
Okay. So you just cut that out with a cutoff wheel and redid it?
Yeah, so we actually had those little 3-inch diamond wheels that go on a die grinder. That's what I would use because it wouldn't have any flex in it.
Okay. You get a lot more precise in there?
Yeah, your abrasive, your aluminum oxide cutoff wheels, they flex quite a bit and it screws you over pretty hard if you're not careful.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. But it makes sense. Like I've done a lot of cutting with a cutoff wheel, and it's like I know that I was holding that grinder straight.
Yep.
So you kind of got like wavy lines on the inside of it.
Yep. But when you got to be within a millimeter, everything counts. Everything helps.
So when you did the pipe, what process and position was the pipe in?
The pipe was a TIG root. It was a 6G TIG root and 70-18 cap. That one's tough. That one's really tough.
Yeah, especially on 4-inch. You don't have a whole lot of time to move. I mean, you're constantly changing your work angle the whole way around.
Yep.
Nothing stays consistent. How do you prop up or brace for that?
I mean, every country has their own way of doing it. Every person has their own way of doing it. Like the Koreans, this blows my mind, but the Koreans, he would squat. He would literally stand in there and squat and just freehand it. I would take a Bessie clamp and rest on the Bessie clamp, I think, or I just have an arm pad and rest against the pipe. And then you can trim your rod. I trimmed my rod sometimes just so that you had a shorter rod, and then you could just a little bit easier to get around it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so you're not going as far. You're a little bit closer to the pipe, a little bit more stable.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, what was your favorite piece that you had to do at the competition?
Like favorite to weld or turned out the best?
Well, let's go with both. Which one was your favorite to weld?
I would say my favorite was probably the 2G 3/8 filling cap on hardwire. Just easy, just soak it in there. Make sure that you're stacking your dimes perfectly with that MIG.
Now,
I spent a lot of time getting my pull settings down.
Okay.
And so, like, it was, I don't know, it just, when you have a pull setting that is just perfect and it's just running right, nothing beats it.
Right. Now, when you do that, do you have any sort of manipulation? Are you doing any like circles or oscillating or like a whip and pause technique or anything like that? Or are you just like a slow, steady push with a wiggle? Or
it depended on the pass for me. So my bottom pass, I'm pretty sure I was just a straight whip back and forth. And then my top pass, I would come up and hit my top toe and hold there for a couple seconds. Well, not a couple seconds, like just a little bit.
like a heartbeat.
And then drop back down really quick. And then just keep going. I mean, it changed for every weld.
It's cool to see how the different welds come out. You know, I wanted to see the different techniques that everybody was doing, but like I didn't want to like go behind and start peeking behind people's curtains and stuff because like I know there's already like a lot of anxiety and stuff built up. I mean, people have a lot going on. You know, riding on this stuff. The last thing you want to do is sit there and bird dog them. But it's a really cool event to see.
Every single person does it different. And you can see the different styles from different countries, and it's pretty impressive.
I've noticed that because it's almost like the different countries, they perfected it, and that's the way they teach to. Because I was talking to Chandler, he's like, you can tell if this is, you can look at it and say, okay, this is a weld that the Koreans did, or this one is from the folks in Brazil, or because they have like a specific style or technique or a look to the way that they do their welds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but they start training them young too, so they don't know how to do anything other than that. Whereas you have like your own style, your technique and everything, and you just kind of hone that throughout the competition.
Yeah, and I think even the Koreans don't practice with a specific machine that we are set out to weld with during competition. Like we know what machine we're welding with, which this year was the PowerWave 300C. But like they just show up and they get a little test plate and they run a 1-inch bead and they adjust their settings and then they go for it. Like me and Chandler, we spend hours and hours making sure that we're within 1/10 of a volt and at 1 inch per minute wire feed speed, make sure it's perfect. And then they just show up and just do it. It blows my mind.
Damn. So when you guys were doing that, were you checking it with the multimeter or were you relying on the machine?
We would check with the multimeter and make sure, I mean, when it's that type of competition, everything has to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And each machine runs a little bit different. Like the machine I was welding with at the school ran a lot different and had a little bit different intricacies compared to the one that I was welding with at Chandler's. And then the one from Chandler's was different from the one at Lincoln. It's just a matter of reading the puddle and knowing what you're looking for.
Yeah, so, a lot of times that's what it comes down to. And a lot of folks, when they're in welding school, they'll tell you that they can see the puddle, but they really don't understand what that puddle actually is. And then, like, one day it just clicks for them. I call that the eureka moment. They're like, oh, now I see it. Okay, because you tell them, you're like, read the puddle. If it might need to be a little, you might have to move a little bit faster if it's too hot, or, you might have to slow down if it's a little too cold. You got to do what the puddle needs. And they're like, I just don't see it. And then one day, all of a sudden, it just clicks for them.
Work time. It's the answer to everything.
Yep. More hood time. Now, so we talked about your favorite piece that you did. What was the one that turned out the best?
Probably that same plate.
Oh, the 2G?
Just specific to module 1. Probably that one. I mean, it's kind of hard because you practice and you know what's going wrong. You know what you lost points on. So in the competition, you don't really feel good about anything that you're putting out. You're like, that doesn't look good. I lost points here. I lost points there. Like we just lost the gold medal. Like,
Oh, so you're grading yourself the whole time you're welding. That's got to be nerve wracking.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, because you know the scoring criteria, you know the grading criteria, what each discontinuity is for points, and
Yep.
damn, like talk about add more stress to it.
Then you got to make sure that your X-ray turns out good, because that's the most amount of points, and you don't know if that's going to turn out good or not. So
Yeah, because you can't see it once you put the cap on it.
yep.
So now with the pressure vessel, I think that's what, like 50 points if it leaks, right? Or it's like a big hit if it doesn't hold pressure. It's almost like 50% of what the overall score was, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty. They could take you from gold to 11th that quick.
So obviously yours didn't leak.
Mine did not leak.
Now, what was that process like? So with your pressure vessel, what processes were on the pressure vessel? Which ones did you have to do?
All 4 main ones. And you get a print a year before competition starts, and like the day before competition, they can change it up to 30%. And so you don't know what joints are going where, or if it's going to be a corner joint or a T-joint, like where you've been welding it the same way for 20 vessels. So all 4 main processes, they all got to tie in. It's all going to be smooth. The variance, the 1 millimeter variance goes throughout all of your tie-ins. So if I had a restart that was like 1.5 millimeters, and that would lose me points, I mean, it's so tight.
And it's not a big piece, but if you look at it, it's like what, probably 150 inches of linear weld on there.
Yeah,
somewhere around
easily.
There. Yeah,
I think I calculated it.
Lot of weld on that piece.
Yeah, a lot of tie-ins, a lot of like 5 welds coming into one point. It could just, you've got restarts there, you've got stops and starts. It just, yeah.
There's a whole lot riding on the corner of a couple different joints laying in there.
Yep.
So now you can't go through the entire piece and just run like a quick TIG root on everything and then cover it up with a bunch of other stuff. You have to run that specific process for that joint and only that process, right?
Yeah, you're allowed to do 15 millimeter tacks, and you can do XYZ on your like corners and stuff. And so I tacked mine with TIG, and I did 15 millimeters, and you do that 15 millimeters, and you make sure that you don't stop or start unless you are on a TIG tack. And even then, it's questionable.
That's a pretty good like process going into it. I mean, a good plan of attack.
It's a whole science. A pressure vessel for World Skills it's a game.
Now, do you have to tack the entire thing up and get that kind of like inspected prior to you welding everything out?
Yep. So you have to tack up. So I think this year we had the top plate. You have to leave that off. Go get it inspected to make sure that you don't have any interior tacks, because you can't have interior tacks. And then you have to weld that, or you have to tack that plate on, and then go get it inspected again and make sure your tacks are within the lengths. And then you can start welding it out.
Oh, okay.
It's a process.
Yeah. Now, what's the hardest part on the pressure vessel? Just like the tie-ins?
Yeah, tie-ins are tough. They have a 0 tolerance policy on arc strikes, and so that's really tough when you have to stick your rod in 6 inches and strike up and make sure that it doesn't stick. And if it does stick, you got to take your stinger off your rod before your rod comes off the plate so you don't strike out.
Yep.
So
that's a good practice to get into. A lot of people are, that also when I was teaching welding, we'd cover arc strikes as a discontinuity, and it's caused by carelessness, because what a lot of people do is they want to wiggle that rod back and forth to snap it off. Mm-hmm. Well, then you end up getting an arc strike. But yeah, like you were saying, if you disconnect the stinger, leave the rod connected, then you can break the rod off. You should never get an arc strike if you do that. That, and I mean, like I'm a two-handed guy, so like if I got to strike an arc in like a critical spot, I'll use my non-dominant hand or the hand that I'm not welding with, kind of like a pull cue, and I'll line the electrode up, and then I'll kind of scratch it, get it going, and then I'll get that hand out of the way.
I do the same thing.
So are you a one-handed welder or a two-handed welder?
Two. Yeah, I don't know how people do it. Like out in the field, I'm one-handed. You sit your elbow and you're on the rollout wheel, and you're one-handed. But World Skills, 2 fingers, you stick the rod in there, just like you were saying.
And there's so much that goes into that competition,
and we're barely touching the surface of it right now.
So what else is there? I mean, to it. I mean, since you've kind of gone behind the scenes, you've went and done everything. What are some of the other things that people don't see about the competition?
That's a long list. I mean, this competition doesn't get very much publicity other than like unless you're really deep in the welding field. So there's a lot that people don't understand. Like if I say that I competed at World Skills, they just think that I'm a competition welder versus World Skills, the amount of time that goes into it and the perfection. Like you're literally perfecting a skill. You're going past what robots can do. And even manufacturers of rod can't manufacture the rod to a high enough standard that we can pass the World Skills criteria. Like microporosity, if that rod got handled with bare fingers, like you throw that away. You don't even weld with it because the oil on your fingers can affect your weld that much.
Really?
Yeah, that's how tight this is.
So how do you handle the electrodes? Because I mean, like you've got your gloves on, obviously, but I mean, you've been touching random stuff all day.
You have different gloves for different stuff. So
okay.
I
already like this.
Yep.
I'm a task-specific glove kind of guy.
Yeah, you make sure they're labeled. You make sure that it's in their own little case so they don't get touched by anything else. Like my TIG gloves, I would make sure they were separated, my stainless, my aluminum. Like it's tight. Like everything's acetoned. Everything, like literally everything, steel, everything.
So, but the pieces, they come in, do they have mill scale on them, or are they already like stripped of all the mill scale?
Yep. They've got mill scale on them.
So you got to grind everything.
Yep. You grind the mill scale off, and you flat disc it so that it's as polished as possible, and then acetone it, and then you can tack it. And you got to be careful about your wire wheels. Make sure they don't have any oil on them. You know.
Now, what are you allowed to use as far as tools? Are there like restrictions to? Can you use fixed string tools or anything like that when you're setting up the vessel?
That's complicated. I think you can use anything you want to tack it up. But like welding wise, you can't have like, say for the 6G pipe, if I created like a clamp that clamped onto the pipe and then it had a bearing in it where I could just rotate on the bearing and just rest my hand. You can't do that. I mean, it gets really complicated because the countries, they come up with insane ideas on how to bypass what tools you can use and what you can't use. It's pretty free reign.
So did you have like any specialty tools in your toolbox that was like legal, but you know, something not thinking outside of the box or out of the ordinary that you were able to use, whether it was for tacking things up or welding things out?
I kept mine simple, just so that I wouldn't have any questions about it. If it was questionable, I took it out. A couple Bessie clamps, a couple finger clamps. That's pretty much all I had. I mean, the craziest I got was a little tool to help me brush my stainless and my aluminum so that I got nice straight lines. And that's it.
Yeah, I wonder what some of the other countries use as far as like different stuff. Because I seen some like I went over to the fab area as well, where they were fabbing everything out. Mm-hmm. And I guess all those competitors, they have 2 toolboxes that are identical. So because they have to ship out their one toolbox and they still have to practice. So it's 2 identical toolboxes, the same exact tools in the same place. that they're practicing as the one that's on the boat coming across, wherever the competition is going to be, or whether it's on a plane or whatever. But they've got 2 separate toolboxes to be able to have the same amount of tools, same exact measuring instruments, like everything's the exact same. So they can keep practicing while their stuff's being shipped.
Yep. That's how you have to do it. I mean, you can't lose 4 days of practice time just because shipping.
Yeah. Yeah, I seen those guys back there. I mean, like, you would swear that their cuts were made with a CNC plasma cutter and their hand oxyfuel cut. Like, man, there's not even any drops on there.
Those guys are insane. It takes a lot of practice.
Yeah, I'm surprised that we don't have anybody that competes for fabrication in the U.S. I guess nobody's ever competed in that portion.
Not for the U.S.
Not at World Skills
trying to
anyway.
get there. Yeah, I know the guy over fabrication at Nationals. He wants to get into it, but it also comes down to a funding thing, because material is going to cost a lot more for the fab competition.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, there's money in the industry. It's not like we can't get it together. We just got to get the word out there.
You would think, man, if all these companies are jumping to sponsor a NASCAR, I mean, like, sponsor some, young man or woman to compete in World Skills for fabrication and welding and all these different things. I mean, with all the tool companies that are out there sponsoring folks on Instagram, like, you would think, I mean, like, sending you to freaking World Skills with a welding jacket with all the different sponsor labels on there.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they could do that. You're up on the world stage competing. And I think they should do a better job of covering it too, man. I mean, like, if paintball's featured on ESPN, we could get welding on there. I like the only way you could watch the World Skills competition was I think you had to go to worldskills.org or whatever, and it was behind a paywall.
Yep.
So I mean, like, let's make this a little bit more accessible. You're out there, like, filming it and stuff. Just go ahead and hit the free button, and let people actually see this. Let welding instructors show their students. I think that would motivate the heck out of a lot of students if they could actually see what's going on.
Yeah.
Sitting in welding class one day and your instructor's like, all right, today we're not going to do any welding. Today we're going to watch, Jordan Packer over here and up at Cleveland, Lincoln Electric in Cleveland, Ohio, compete on the world stage when it comes to welding. I mean, they're already there filming it anyway. Just show everybody.
Yep. I mean, you have to be super deep into the competition world to know about World Skills, period. And Jody from Welding Tips and Tricks, he came out with a video that showed pretty well what was going on. But even then,
there was a lot of stuff that he wasn't able to film and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, he did a good job. I watched that video when it came out. I mean, Lincoln did the best they could. They put us up in one little area kind of above the competition where you can kind of see. But it wasn't. It was kind of in the back. I mean, you had to look across and kind of zoom in pretty far to be able to see anything. But there just wasn't like a good vantage point. I mean, you could see stuff, but like filming, it was kind of difficult. Jody got some good clips though.
I could see, like, with Lincoln, the time that they had to prepare, I could see why they wouldn't have like better facilities for that. But like, when we're spending 2 years preparing for a competition, to have some facilities to film with. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, they could make it happen if they got that kind of timeline and stuff.
Yeah.
So now with the other competitors, did you guys get along pretty good? Was there some animosity in the group, or do you guys just keep to yourselves, or do you hang out with each other and like eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or like how's that go?
This year was kind of weird. I know that typically they split your competitors and your experts up. So your competitors are together all the time. But like, we went out to dinner after competition. We went and got some barbecue. We were talking, Google Translate, having a conversation. Like, we got along. We still have a group chat on Instagram right now that we check up on each other, see what we're doing.
Oh, that's cool.
It's pretty sweet.
Did you learn any of their trade secrets on how they do things, or anything that you could pass off to the next competitor?
We've got a few really good things that we'll pass off to the next competitor.
Okay.
Not necessarily from other countries. I mean, they do it their way, and we try to adopt it, but also we don't have the time to perfect it like they do.
Mm-hmm. So
but
now,
we've got some pretty good tricks.
So you're part of the committee now because you placed at World Skills. So you get to hang out with Brandon Mulebrandt and Chandler Vincent and all those guys to train the next competitor. When's the next World Skills? That's what do they do it every? It's every 2 years, right?
Every 2 years. This one is going to be 2024. So next year, because they had a weird offset with COVID, pushing it back. So trial starts in 2 months.
Okay. So you guys will have your competitor next month shortly after the 17th, because it starts on the 17th, right? For Skills National?
Yeah, it starts on the 17th. At least I have to show up on the 17th.
So whoever wins that links up with you guys, and then they start going through a training regiment.
Nope.
No?
Not even that.
No?
They have to compete again to get the spot to represent the United States. I took 11th at Nationals the year that I competed at Nationals.
Okay.
And the trials process, you have to compete against the top 24 individuals from the past 2 years of Nationals.
Oh, wow. So it's not like if you place first at Nationals, you're automatically going to World Skills. There's another layer.
Oh.
See, I didn't even know that. There's a whole other layer of competition.
Yep. 8 months of competition just after Nationals, just to get the spot.
And then you compete against people from that placed the year before.
Yep. You have a pre-trials process, and then you have a trials process. The pre-trials is like 6 months long, where you weed out to the top 6. And then the top 6 get flown out to Huntsville, Alabama, where we train for a week, and then we go home, train for a month, and then compete down to the top 3. And then we compete again after another month of training down to top number 1.
And then number 2 would be like an alternate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Man, I figured that, okay, you take first at Nationals, you're going.
Nope.
No, there's more competition. Deal. Yeah. And there's a lot more than I thought. So what would you tell somebody that's, in whether they're in high school or trade school or whatever, and they're kind of at that age? Because World Skills, what's the age cutoff for that?
I think it's 23 the year you compete.
Yeah, so you can't be any older than 23 by the year you compete. So what's something that you would tell somebody, whether it's they're in high school or a trades program, they meet the age criteria, that wants to compete and kind of they want to compete on the world stage? What would you tell them starting off? What can they start doing right now to start preparing themselves to compete at World Skills?
Hood time. I would say that the main thing is hood time. Get as much hood time as you possibly can. And then you can get in contact with one of us on the committee, Chandler, me, Ray Connolly, Brandon Mulebrandt, and we can help you out in getting the information that you'll need for World Skills, like the scoring criteria, the technical description, the welds that you're going to have to do. It's an information game. There's a lot of information specific to World Skills. So if you ask your state representative, they can get in contact with us, or you'll have to be at Nationals. And at Nationals, you'll have most of the committee there anyway. So just come up to us, ask us about it, say, this is what I want to do. What am I going to need to do? And we're happy to help. We want to bring the best competitor to that competition that we possibly can.
So get in contact with you and practice. Much hood time as you can. Practice.
Yep, as much material as you possibly can put out.
Well, very cool. Yeah, I think this year I want to say they're switching over to all the welder made kits and stuff like that. So I mean, if you wanted to start practicing a lot of that stuff, you can order those right online now.
Yep,
that makes it a lot easier because you kind of have a general idea of what everybody's going to be competing with. I know for the longest time, welding competitions was all, 3G stick test. That's pretty much what everybody was working on. But I like to see there's a little bit more fabrication involved into it. So whether it's a pressure vessel or like, a little widget or a component that you have to assemble and then, as well as weld that out. I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I think Welder Made, it's evening the playing field on competitors, and it's making you the best that you can be. And Chandler does a really good job of making sure that it's affordable, and those kits are pretty sweet. I mean, I welded plenty of them.
We used them for the my buddy Brian Legalio. He teaches over at Marchman Tech. We used the Welder Made kits this year for their their regional skills competition. So it made it a lot easier because we could send out the prints ahead of time. It was like, here's what everybody's going to be welding on. It comes with a welding procedure specification. I really like the grading criteria because that was cool. You program, you score everything, and then you can use the Zip Grade app on your cell phone to do all the scoring.
Yep.
And it's super simple. It made judging 10 times easier.
Makes your competition go from a 10-hour competition to 5 hours.
Oh yeah, it can cut the time in half because the bulk of the time is judging it.
Yep.
You got 5 judges and 10 competitors, and you're scoring at that point. All the different pieces. It takes time.
It's well worth the cost.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Before we get out of here, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you at if you want to be found on Instagram or any other social medias?
My Instagram is Jordan Packer 20 with the underscore in between Jordan and Packer. And that's pretty much it. Just Instagram. That's all. That's what I'm really active on. So it'll say World Skills Bronze Medalist 2022. Other than that, feel free to contact me at any time. I'm more than willing to help in anything that I can.
Well, awesome, man. I appreciate that. And thanks for taking your time to come out here and share your story with the listeners of Weld Wednesday.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, man, it was great catching up with you.
We'll have to do it again sometime.
Oh, for sure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to this month's edition of Weld Wednesdays with AWS. Before we get out of here, I wanted to let you know about some awesome events AWS is hosting over the summer to expand your knowledge on all things welding. This summer is the perfect time to level up your learning and boost your career with the AWS Summer of Learning. Take advantage of this opportunity by exploring the wide range of online learning opportunities and certificates offered by AWS. Whether you're an instructor seeking support, a young professional looking to gain exposure to leadership opportunities, or a seasoned professional looking to enrich your knowledge, AWS has a host of options to help make this summer the most powerful yet. And the best part is, AWS is offering 15% off on all their summer professional development webinars, including aluminum welding for fabricators, inspectors, and engineers, WPS, PQR, and WPQRs, and how to increase your facility's productivity. There's also a wide array of conferences, workshops, and events featuring presentations by industry experts where attendees can expand their knowledge, earn PDHs, and leverage networking opportunities. Individuals looking to attend in-person events can find a complete list by visiting aws.org/conferences. So seize the moment, invest in your future, and embrace the summer of learning with the American Welding Society. So visit aws.org today to explore the extensive range of offerings and start your journey towards success. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.